Hi, I'm Jessica Eaton, and this is Task 1 for the Major and Mega Events module. Hope you enjoy. So, the introduction. This presentation will look at a number of case studies of terrorist attacks, focusing on the Munich massacre, as well as events and how they've changed to ensure security for everybody. So, terrorism is a strategy of using fear caused by violent attacks to promote a message or political cause. Terrorism is a violent act that's goal is to demoralise or a population or government. And that's exactly what happened at the Munich Olympic Games. This slide just looks at the key points that happened on that day, but for more information there is a hyperlink on the slide. The terrorist attack occurred at the Munich Olympic Games on the 5th of September 1972 by the terrorist organisation Black September. They sought for the release of the prisoners in Israel. So, the terrorists invaded Israel's accommodation and 2 athletes were unfortunately killed immediately. 9 athletes were then held hostage in ransom for the release of the prisoners. The German government started negotiations between Israel, but they were running out of time and they were threatened to kill another hostage. An elimination attempt was attempted by the police against terrorists, but the terrorists were using surveillance to monitor the police. More time was negotiated and the police were given until 12 noon. Israel would not agree to release the prisoners, and therefore the terrorists then checked on the hostages and understood that there was 5 gunmen found. The chief of police decided to lie to terrorists about the release to draw out the hostages. The plan was to eliminate the terrorists before they got on the plane coming off the helicopter. However, a lot went wrong with the plan to eliminate the terrorists, including 8 gunmen were actually loaded onto the helicopter when they thought there was only 5, but this was not communicated. The helicopter landed in a complete wrong side, so there was no view of the terrorists, and the shoot-off then occurred between the 8 gunmen that they thought was 5. The police called for backup, and when that happened, the terrorists got scared and let off a grenade, killing all hostages. A lot went wrong on this day which led to this to happen. This is shown on the next slide. There was no preparation or planning, lack of training, lack of effective communication, and lack of equipment. There was no proper armed forces or an adequate team present that day. All police were just normal police off the street, and therefore there was no training for sniper training or training to deal with terrorism. Reading Ritchie 2011 suggests wherever there is a large crowd gathered, the importance of risk management, planning and preparedness is vital. This shows that for an event such as the Olympic Games, planning and preparedness should have happened. Silvers and O'Toole 2020 suggests risk management is a recognition of liabilities and crises. Therefore, this should have been planned for and the necessary risk management put into place. If the Munich massacre had identified and prepared for these risks, the outcome may have happened the same. The German government ignored help and warning signs from Israel, who wanted to send help from people with specialist qualifications and training. However, they insisted that the police could handle it, but it's obvious now that the police could not. The police were not prepared, undertrained, and lacked in equipment. The police did not know how to handle a crisis such as this. After the Munich massacre, it sparked a turning point in event safety and security, and it began the joining of counter-terrorism forces and the police at events. 9/11 is another event that changed the security landscape. According to Britannia 2001, 9/11 is the name of the series of airline hijackings and suicide attacks that happened in 2001 by the Islamic terrorist group. 2,750 people died alone in New York, 184 people at the Pentagon and 40 in Pennsylvania. Over 400 special forces, including firefighters and police, were called in the recovery efforts. Since 9/11, the security landscape has changed, which therefore meant security events around the world changed, including aviation. New aviation rules, which we now know of as normal, was implemented, included baggage scans, taking off your shoes, liquid allowances, and new security doors. This then had a knock-on effect to how security was implemented at events. The Athens Olympic Games is a perfect example of how events changed post 9/11. The Athens Games spent over $1.2 billion on safety, which was a whole 10% of the overall Games budget. In addition to this, there was the creation of the Olympic Advisory Team, made up of the police, the Coast Guards, the fire department and the armed forces, who reported directly to the Chief of Police. The Olympic Advisory Team was created, which allowed the ability for different countries to share intelligence and information. In addition to this, altogether there was 41,000 security personnel at these games, which is a huge difference in comparison to the 2,130 security staff present at the Munich Games. This shows just how 9/11 and the Munich massacre made people think differently about security. However, quite a lot of people were still scared about attending events such as this post 9/11. However, the Athens Olympic Games came to become known as one of the safest guarded Olympic Games of all times. The Qatar FIFA World Cup case study shows the need for international cooperation and the need for special forces. They had cooperation deals with over 13 countries. 32,000 government personnel and 17,000 from the private sector. Turkey, France, Pakistan had sent security personnel also, including 3,000 riot police, 100 special forces and 50 bomber specialists. Without international cooperation and the safety forces that present, it wouldn't have been as safe. This was not present at the Munich massacre. If the Munich Olympic Games had accepted advice and international help, the terrorist attack may have never happened. Since 1972, as shown by the case studies before, there has been recognition for the need of risk management, international forces and planning and preparation. They realised that large events with high media coverage became a capital for terrorism. Bennett and Haggerty 2012 suggests the Olympics have become an object where perception of danger increases. This has been seen over time through such crises as 9/11 and the Munich massacre. There is greater fear surrounding major events. Since then, Olympic security strategies have become increasingly standard, including CCTV surveillance on the Olympic Village. If CCTV surveillance and security was present at the Israeli accommodation, the terrorists may have never had an opportunity like they did. Anti-terrorism budgets have had to multiply to ensure essential forces and resources can be used. The graph shows the budget for security at the Olympic Games from 1984 to 2004. As you can see, in 2004, the budget grows immensely because it was post 9/11. It grows from $179.6 million in the year 2000 to $1.5 billion in the year 2004. This is due to the use of CCTV, surveillance vans, mobile trucks and military staff present at the Olympic Games. The Tokyo Olympic Games 2022 were the first mega event to introduce facial recognition into their security regime. This was in order to increase efficiency and cut down on waiting times for the staff and athletes. Tokyo had also got an extensive security workforce, including 21,000 police officers, 6,000 emergency personnel, 850 Coast Guards, and 14,000 contract security. However, because of 9/11 and other terrorist attacks, a big worry among athletes and attendees was transport to and from the event, because although there is extensive security at the event, transport was a major safety concern. However, Tokyo 2020 had an extensive transport plan that was committed to the athletes' and attendees' comfort and safety. This included all accommodation and venues being less than 8 kilometres away from public transport. Coach bases transports for athletes were also a separate operation, and there was an Olympic bus lane. The Manchester Arena bombing is unfortunately a more recent example of a terrorist attack. It happened on the 22nd of May 2017, where a suicide bomber detonated a bomb at the arena exit. This was the deadliest attack since the 2005 London bombings. A lot went wrong with the Manchester Arena's response and the emergency services response after the bomb went off. There was not enough paramedics, the fire crew took over 2 hours, not enough ambulances, and the evacuation procedure failed, with over 36 casualties being left in the building after midnight. In addition to this, the training procedure at the arena itself were under par and inadequate, with officials not being properly trained in first aid or what to do in the evacuation process. The next slide shows the failure of the emergency responses and how long it took. As you can see, it took 27 minutes for the first ambulance to arrive and 4 hours and 90 minutes for the final casualty to leave the hospital. And on this slide it shows that Safi died an hour and 9 minutes after the bomb went off, due to how long it took for the emergency services to respond. This should have never happened in a modern age. After the Manchester Arena bombing, Martin's Law was created. After the death of her son Martin, she felt necessary that there was a change in legislation. At the time of the Manchester Arena bombing, there was no legislation saying security and safety was law, but only guidance, and therefore a document was set called Martin's Law outlining the minimum requirements that are necessary. If this document was present at the Manchester Arena bombing or at the Munich massacre, the outcome may have never been the same for either. Something that's a lot more scary in modern times is the use of technology by terrorists. For example, monitoring drones, AI, and 3D printing. The monitoring aspect was used in the Munich Games. The terrorists monitored the movement of officials and could see all the goings on. The future of technology strikes fear as it enhances weapons. An example of this is drones. Small weaponized drones have been seen to be created to kill civilians for groups to assert control. There is also fear of terrorists using AI killer robots to be used in the future by terrorists. Paris 2024 Olympics is an example of a future event and how security will be used in the future. The Paris 2024 Olympic Games have had a new threat: drones. As discussed in the slide before, technology such as drones is becoming an increasing threat. However, France is set to deploy 30,000 security personnel to protect the people from the drone attacks. AI-assisted security will also be implemented to help law enforcement stop violence, and therefore recognition can be used in order to try and decrease the amount of violence in stadiums and sporting events. In addition to this, there will be 100 CCTV cameras and surveillance around the accommodation and the stadium. If technology like this was present at the time of the Munich Games, it would have meant that the terrorists would have never been able to sneak in. Positive advances such as aerial vehicles and facial recognition provide greater intelligence and greater strategic oversight for events. In the future, there will be greater amounts of machine learning which can track suspicious behaviour and movements. It's important that security organisations learn from the past to improve on the security of the future. There has been great improvements in technology and legislation, especially post 9/11. Thank you for watching the presentation. The references are linked below. Thank you.